Well, you're watching World Talks on TVP World. My name is Sascha Fahrbach. The annual March of the Living returns to the grounds of Auschwitz Birkenau this year as thousands gather on Yom HaShoah to retrace a path once marked by the Nazi death marches and transform it into a symbol of remembrance and resilience. Now, the 2026 edition is marked by heightened security concerns and the absence of Israeli delegations, even as survivors, students, and global leaders converge in Poland to confront the legacy of the Holocaust. We're now joined by Alina Nowobilska, historian and host of Moment in Time, World War II edition podcast. Good to have you in the studio. Welcome.
I'm very grateful. Thank you so much for inviting me today.
So I want to call on your history, knowledge, your expertise. Let's just start with why this date today. Tell us a bit of the symbolism of this march.
Well, it's Holocaust Memorial Day. And it is an important thing, and Auschwitz Birkenau, for example, is the largest symbol of the Holocaust. So having that walk from the Arbeitermacht Freigate, for example, all the way to that imposing giant gate that we all know of Birkenau that appears in every photograph you ever see of Auschwitz. And having all of these young people being able to march in silence, because I myself was there a couple of years ago, to be able to experience that is incredibly powerful. And it's a moment for them to be able to reflect. It's a moment for them to be able to understand, many of them, their own heritage or their own family who may have even died there, I don't try and losing my words here because it is such a important moment. I think it really is an important moment, and I keep saying important moment because it is an important moment to be able to do something like this.
Yeah, the numbers we're not 100% sure of, but it does seem many have signed up, several thousand. You said you were there some years ago. I mean, what does that tell us about how the kind of, let's say, scale of this we call it the March of the Living. So let's talk about those people who are present now. What's the significance there of current memory and trauma, balancing those two things?
God, that is a very difficult question you've asked me to talk about in literally a few minutes. It is a way for us to be able to still remember those that we've lost, but to remind everyone that we're still here. That is so important, and we're alive. We're keeping the memory of those who have lost their lives alive. And that moment of silence, I'm thinking, what is it? God, it's completely gone out of my brain to how many minutes of silence it would be for every victim of the Holocaust. It's years. So having to be able to march for years from one gate to another would be quite, But the trauma for that is, let me go back to this, that if you read a lot of the testimonies, these people who have gone through this March of the Living, it's powerful. And many of them struggle afterwards because you have to see exactly where these people have died. Not that you're reading it out of a book, because any of us can pick up a book and just, read about it. You're there, you're right there. You're being able to see the gas chambers. You're able to see how and where these people walked their last moments, where they were selected, for example, on the ramp. It's daunting. A friend of mine recently came back from Auschwitz and it broke her. It is a breaking moment for people, and I think it's important for people to do, even for Poles to do it, even for people part of the Roma and Sinti community, people from every walk of life that was persecuted at the end of the day. But today we're talking about Holocaust Remembrance Day, so I'm not going to go on a rant talking about everybody else.
With also, you alluded to it already, the place, Auschwitz Birkenau. As you said, it's the most infamous of the German-run camps. Tell us a little bit why. Maybe it's an easy answer, maybe not, but why this particular place still holds so much significance now, but then also about the other places and how this all ties together.
I think part of it is also that most of it stands. So if you, for example, go somewhere like Treblinka or Belzec, there's nothing there. There is nothing tangible. You can't see. You have to use your imagination or a map or visualization aids to be able to see what happened there. In Auschwitz, you can actually walk and see the crematorium. You can walk and see the gas chambers. You can know exactly the steps that these people took from point A to point B. Whereas Treblinka, like I said, you have to have a map. You have to be able to visit, and there's nothing to be able to see. It's really difficult for people to be able to understand and people to be able to connect to a place like that. But it is still important to be able to go and see these other places. It's also, by the way, this is a really horrible opinion I'm going to add, a lot of people will go to Krakow, and when they go to Krakow, they have to go to Auschwitz. And other places of memory are being forgotten. Places like Majdanek, which still stands, still has their gas chamber, it still has their crematorium, it still has those ridges of where people were shot. 18,000 people are shot in the span of a day. And we're forgetting other places of memory. And I think at the end of the day, the March of the Living in general, because we're talking about one specific day right now, this is weeks of events. It's like 2 weeks where people go and visit all of these sites of memory. But the outside world seems to have forgotten.
Speaking of, you mentioned memory and forgetting, we still have some survivors left. I mean, this is now, we're looking at over 80 years since all this happened. How do you think that will change once the survivors are no more? How does that experience change?
For you and me, I'm assuming, we have grown up in an era where we can meet survivors very easily. So we can go to these events, or they have speaking events or meetings, for example. So we've had this accessibility to be able to talk to these people who have survived these horrific events. But the youth who are not going to be able to meet them, I think it's going to be very, very difficult. And if you witness the behaviour in some of these places, it is very disrespectful. I'm not saying everybody, and I'm not saying all the time, but there are instances where these people just are so disconnected. And having all of these Holocaust survivors just pass away, we're losing that connection, and we're losing it fast. And I think historians and educators, we're going to have to find another way. I don't know what it is. It's something I've talked about before on here, but we're going to have to find something to be able to connect to these young people, to be able to get them to understand what these people went through. Because a video, great, fantastic, it helps. But they're not able to say to that video, how did you feel in that very moment that X, Y, and Z happened? So it's a thing that we need to go back to and talk about a little bit more and dig deeper.
And also about, I think, experience. We talk about this March of the Living, with people walking Auschwitz Birkenau, really doing those physical steps. How, in that point, why is that so significant compared to, let's say, if you go to the Holocaust Museum, if you go to Washington, D.C. or something like that, we're seeing anywhere else, just a museum, why is that physical part connection so important to this?
Well, one main thing, people actually walk those steps. Holocaust victims didn't walk in the US Holocaust Memorial, but actual human beings who died, underwent horrific experiences, walked from one camp to the other, especially at times when Birkenau was being built and there was nowhere to live. Survivors and people who built that camp would walk from Auschwitz I to Auschwitz II. It's also to do with death marches as well. That's the second point. So it's being able to honour those who underwent horrific conditions under those death marches. And that is a whole other topic that we could probably talk about for hours. And people being shot in the middle of the road just because they cannot keep up, or they are so exhausted, so physically exhausted, because they're walking thousands of kilometres. People seem to assume they were all just shoved into cattle trucks and just driven or taken by trucks. They weren't. These people physically had to walk. Many escaped, those lucky ones. We have some testimonies from people that luckily did escape, because we can understand the functioning of the camp system a little bit better, because they witnessed horrific things. For example, the Sonderkommando people managed to escape, which is very lucky. Otherwise, pregnant women at the side of the road, bodies were littered. Even the civilians who witnessed this, because obviously civilians couldn't come out of their homes, they did try and help any victims that walked past, but it's a very difficult and horrific, and I'm lost for words now, because reliving this and testimonies in my head, I'm trying to put this all together to be able to convey to people what this was all about. And there we go to the other point. Those who survived it would be able to tell us. I myself am giving you a second-hand account, and we're losing that connection with those people that are passing away. So,
and also, if we do look at, it's hard to condense it all into one message, really, but also for the future, generally, or if someone is going to attend or maybe wants to go in future, or just observing it now, watching this, what do you think is that enduring message to take away from today's march there?
I want to say remembrance, but that is so cliche, because it is. But I think
What did you get out of it? You said you were there. What were your personal feelings afterwards?
Peace. I know it's a really horrible thing to say, but it was. It was a very peaceful march, because usually when you go on a march, there's lots going on. It was very peaceful. Everybody was together, and it was a unity. So for me, it was peaceful, and that sign of unity of people being able to be together and talking to each other afterwards as well, and that kind of communication. So for me, yeah, okay, let's go with the cliche: remembrance, peace, and unity.
All right. So, but as well, a heavy topic, but something so incredible for everyone around the world to remember, as you said. Thanks for sharing that, coming in and talking to us about this. Alina Nowobilska, historian, shares all this on this important day. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching. That concludes World Talks, but stay right here on TVP World for more news and commentary. Goodbye.